Ian, it's
Nice.
good to be talking to you today. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Fine, thank you. Now I have to say, like before we start talking, let my wife know I'm going to be interviewing Ian. She was a big Pretty Little Liars fan, always
Ugh.
pulling for Ezra and Ariel. Um,
Yeah.
do you? I mean, you've had your hand in a lot of different productions, a lot of different things. Does it still have a good place in your heart, Pretty Little Lies? Do you mind being recognized for that role?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it depends on what the context of the recognition is. I mean, I've realized especially the storyline with like teacher student thing has not
Right,
aged well. And I remember when a couple of years ago, a show with Kate Mara or what's it's terrible. I'm blanking on her name, but it was called like A Teacher, I think.
right.
And it was basically that, but then the real
Yeah,
life consequences and like how their lives unravel.
yeah.
And and so naturally my storyline came back up and like the zeitgeist and I was like, oh yeah, no, this is not great. But yeah, for the most, I mean, it's always I always love it and I talk with I've actually been chatting with Lucy a lot recently
Right.
and I was like at Tori DeVito's wedding and like so, yeah, we're all still chums.
Now, obviously, Pretty Little Liars. I mean, every episode, anything could happen. There's another letter from A. This is going on.
Yeah.
It was a really crazy ride. Now, Ripple is more reality centered,
Yeah.
grounded. How was your approach to that? Because again, you were on a show where and shit's happening all the time, and now you're in a very human show.
Yeah. I think it's always the writing,
Right,
So if thankfully Michelle Gianusa was just awesome and was able to organically craft everything so that it really felt like, this point, get you to this point, and then get you to this point.
right,
And because they were, it also helps that because I sort of had like more to do,
right,
that it made more sense that I had a better sense of who he was and I got his perspective.
right.
So we just, I just was able to kind of tap. You learn the lines and you show up and you say them. And then when you're with other actors who also get it, who are also in the same world,
Right.
there's not a lot of effort there, which is like, I know it sounds terrible, but it's kind of like, you know, I feel like when somebody wins an Oscar for being in like a movie written and directed and starring like the greats, I'm kind of
Right.
like, did they really win an award for this? Because like really, and I think really like humble and thoughtful actors will say that. They're like, yeah, I just showed up and I said the lines.
Yeah.
And that was kind of with this. It was just because everybody was really invested and cared about it
Right.
and thoughtful about the work. Because especially with TV, it's very fast moving. So you
Yeah.
never sometimes you get something that, oh, actually, so we lost this location, but it was kind of integral to this scene.
Right.
So we're gonna do this now. And you just kind of have to go with it.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question at all, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
Now, the show is about, a bunch of strangers who find that they have something in common. Um,
Yeah.
please describe everybody who your character is and how significant they are to the story.
Yeah, I played Nate. So Nate owns this bar and music venue in New York, and Nate's life is sort of cracking.
Yeah.
He is a guy who has always been um, pulled together, who has always been self-driven,
Hmm.
who has always cared about what he believed to be meaningful things,
Right.
and then all of these sort of pillars of his life start to kind of crack. And like his health, where there was a line, I think it was like the first episode where I said, like, but I don't get it. Like I don't drink,
Yeah.
I don't smoke, I don't do,
Yeah.
any of these things. Like, how did this happen? And it's like, that's just life.
Yeah.
And then like I was always, like he loves his family and he loves, being a dad, but also then that starts to kind of crack and this venue that he put his heart and soul into, it's not doing well and it's just and so it's all the screws are just tightening. And so the thing that maybe saves him, maybe, watch and find out,
Yeah.
is the people that he meets and connects with and what he builds with them.
I can empathize with him. I can. Years ago, I went for a heart test, and there was a guy beside me in a bed doing heart tests, and he was this looked like this athlete. And the doctor said, like, you have heart issues. We got to investigate. And he's like, I bike 10 miles a day, and da, da, da. And it's like,
Yeah.
and the doctor said, well, it's just your genetics. It's just you were born. There's nothing you did to cause this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just your family background and this kind of thing. Is that what drew you to the character? Because again, he's got a lot of things going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I love I love those kind of stories, like the kind of the tragedies in some way,
Yeah.
but you never play it as tragic. I mean, I think
Right.
again, what Michelle did was she wrote them not the sort of, but and specifically Nate, he
Yeah.
wasn't, like he wasn't so he didn't wallow. Like
Yeah.
there's all of the characters kind of push against and grapple with whatever that obstacle is that they've been given.
Yeah.
Whether it's Walter and his wife or,
Right.
Chris and her loss of like a sense of self and her father and then for me it's like all of these things that you thought were steady are not.
Yeah.
And so how do you be not broken by
Yeah.
that's a horrible way of saying it, but how do you not let these things break you? And that's what's interesting and that's what's compelling to watch too.
Now, obviously, one of the core concepts of the show is this idea of fate versus destiny. Where do you kind of land on all of that?
Oh,
I
fate
know, I
and
know that
destiny.
I know that's a heady question, but
Oh, I
where
love these questions.
what
Yeah.
do you, where does your head land when it comes? I know how I feel. I believe we're in control of our own fate and things just happen around us. But what's your take on everything?
I think it's probably all of those things at once, in that like you
Right.
can't um there are certain components in life that you can't control,
Yeah.
but you can only kind of control your reaction to it. And
Right.
so, I think that it's all depending on what kind of philosophy you want to look at it with.
Yeah.
Like the Stoics are the whole thing that's like it's, you can't control your life, but you
Right.
control what happens, how you react to it.
Right.
And if you're like religious in any way, it's that this is actually what is meant to
It
happen. This
happens.
is
Yeah.
God has a plan for you or whatever. And I
Yeah.
think you can kind of bring all that together and say, okay, at no point does wallowing or necessarily running away from. I think you can be angry and emote and let it all out and say what you
Right.
feel. Like, I think if I were in Nate's situation, like I'm sure there'd be a whole lot of like raging and sadness at the fact that I've been dealt these cards. But then
Yeah.
you get to a point and you say, okay, so now all I can do is deal with this.
Yeah.
So, so that's why, yeah, I think, um, yeah, you can't control what happens to you. You can only
Yeah.
control how you react to it.
Now, one
Um,
of the other big things in this show, and again, I went through this when I was in J school, journalism school, but our teacher always said to us, like, gave us this scenario and said, here's somebody who's passed away.
mhm.
How do you portray, if you're in a small town and you're working for
Yeah,
that newspaper, how is that different when you're in a city where this person is maybe more anonymous? So it was the whole like, well, where you are depends upon how you play this and how you react. I
yeah,
mean, if you walk down the street in a small town and bump into somebody, you're liable to say, "Oh, sorry, sorry." But maybe in the big city where people are rushing back and forth, there isn't that connection.
yeah, yeah.
How do you think that show brings home that message? Because again, I've lived here in Toronto for the longest time. It's a big city, and
Mhm.
you do have a little bit of that anonymity that people can play off of.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny that you said Toronto because, obviously the show was set in New York, but we
Yeah,
shot it in Toronto.
yeah,
And it was interesting just the different cultures in the city.
right.
Like, so much is beautiful. There's so much beauty in New York as well as,
Mhm.
it's New York.
Yeah,
So it obviously has an underbelly as well. But, I think uh, I love that these strangers
yeah,
meet and connect, and it's a slow thing, and it
yeah,
feels um, organic, and it makes sense. Nothing really feels forced, and I feel like that's actually the kind of magic of these places. Because there are times I remember, like again, living in LA and
yeah,
or, spending time in New York. Sometimes, yeah, for all the like hustle and bustle,
yeah,
you still have these moments of connection that are that you just kind of have to follow. Like I remember years ago, I was actually in Munich
Wow.
and my wife and I were walking around and
Yeah.
trying to go to this art museum, but it was closing early that day. We ran into somebody else who happened to um, who also thought it was open for the full amount of time. And we could have in that moment just been like, all right, or just ignored the person, or
Right.
sometimes people make awkward jokes like closing early, huh? As if that's the joke, where you're like, well, there's nothing funny about that, but you feel compelled to laugh.
Yeah.
But what we ended up doing was meeting each other with authenticity
Yeah.
and not trying to like shirk off this interaction.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, we spent like hours with this guy walking around like the English garden and and then at the end, it was really beautiful.
Yeah.
He said, "Could you do me a favor?" And we're like, "What?" And it was like, "Let's not exchange emails or contact at all."
Oh,
And we said like, "Yeah, let's leave this as this moment."
yeah.
And that was and that
Wow.
was like one of the most beautiful interactions of our lives. So I think that sort of spontaneous experience is possible, and I think that that's what all these people experience, and then in the case of the show, continue to
Yeah.
foster.
Now,
Yeah,
you're talking about special relationships. You have Nate and his daughter, played by
yeah,
Hazel Langgrander. Um, how was it like working with her, the sign language? I mean, for those who don't know, she's deaf.
yeah,
How was it like working with her and having to, was it something new to you that you had to learn as you went through the process?
yeah. I didn't know Azel at all,
Right,
and we definitely had a bunch of wonderful teachers, and there's like a huge. I'm blanking on the company off the top of my head. I feel really terrible because this is a perfect moment to like advertise for them.
yeah,
But yeah, we had a whole team that
right,
helped us, but also after a while, it just became the equivalent of you're working with somebody that just speaks a different language,
right,
and
right,
there was never a sense of like, I mean, I learned so much about the the deaf community
right,
as she might not say that she was a child, but like her parents and the various other people that we worked with,
right,
um, and how not only my complete ignorance when it came to certain subjects, but
right,
um, that it's its own world, like anything, like any person that is a part of a culture that speaks a certain language. And so, yeah, I scratched the surface, and I tried to be thoughtful about it, and even in something we might try and change it for season two. That, like, for the most part, when people are communicating with each other via ASL, they're not
right,
also saying the words
right,
because the
right, yeah,
person cannot
yeah,
hear you. And it's kind of like we don't need to have this other language, which
right,
is spoken English, in our interaction. We can simply sign, and that's enough. There's whereas sometimes what you see on TV shows, people are like, wait, what do you mean by that? While they're like doing the signs. It's like that doesn't happen.
yeah,
But we had to do it a little bit for the show, but I think we're gonna probably change that in the second season.
yeah,
But yeah, I could talk about that subject alone for
right,
40 minutes.
right.
Yeah.
Well, you guys were like magical on screen. Those moments you had to get, a lot of the unsaid moments as well. Speaking of
Mhm.
moments, I mean, you have your love interest, Chris, in the show. And
Yeah.
I love the dynamic because here you have somebody who's Chris, who's like rock steady. I mean, she's lost her sense of self, like you say, but she's rock steady. She knows, this is the right way to go. Da, da, da. And you're kind of being buoyed and bouncing around, floating around because you have all these different things happening to you. Did you really like the dynamic and the chemistry you guys had?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, it does help that Julia Chan and I
Yeah.
seem to know and have met and worked with everybody else except each other. Maybe not
Wow.
everybody. It's really like two or three people. But
Wow.
she did a play with my friend Will Brill, who's an actor,
Yeah.
and then she did a show with Lucy Hale, and so like we knew a bunch of people who had that in common.
Right.
But there is that kind of intangible thing that like you just interact with somebody and you just get it. I
Yeah.
think she and I were also at like similar stages in life and career
Right.
um and and she's talked about this in public before, so I'm not like breaking anything here, but
Right.
she finished chemotherapy in February of last year.
Yeah.
And then we started shooting in like August or September. So it's still very new. And I had also experienced with, even though cancer and lupus are very different,
Yeah.
I had being around illness or chronic illness or um, having that specter always with you
Yeah.
was something that I was familiar with. And
Yeah.
I think there are certain aspects of people's personality who have lived with that, who have lived with serious illness, that you just get, you just kind of have a language. And
Yeah.
so we were able to like instantly connect. And I think even if the words on the page were blah 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 blah, I still think we would have some sort of connection on screen just because of who she is and who I am.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, in your experience, I mean, this is something really fascinating to me as somebody who has learned to learn more and insight into the craft itself. But that connection that you're talking about, does that
yeah.
happen very often?
No, you can try to manufacture it.
Right.
I think you have to have two people that are willing to listen and be vulnerable with each other.
Right.
And
Right.
especially like if you're an actor, ideally, like that's 90% of it,
Yeah.
it's just listening and vulnerability.
Right.
Um, so, but yeah, it doesn't happen all the time. And as much as I think you can say, like, we can look at like our lives and we make like a checklist and say,
Right.
well, I'm like this and she's like this and that's it. And oh, that's what we connect on.
Yeah.
It just has to be an ability to be it's about being vulnerable and listening to each other. And I think that's what you have to do in life as well as to create chemistry on screen.
Now, one last question here. I mean, your character, at the end of the show is on a more positive road.
Yeah.
Um, are you happy with how things wrapped up for your character in season one? And you talked about a season two. Is that in the books?
I mean, we're hoping. I mean, it's like one of these things we could find out this afternoon. We could
Right.
find out in February.
Right.
It's who knows. I think the response has been really positive, and I know
Yeah.
that the show has cracked the like top 10
Yes.
like trending and in Canada, Ireland, Australia. Hopefully, it happens this week for the US, which is
Yeah.
always a positive sign. And so I think it's totally possible.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not sure what to expect for season two
Right.
because I love Michelle's writing, period, full stop.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I also love how the show ended because it's both a positive note
Yes.
and yet an uncertain one
Yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah.
And what was kind of great was that, yes, the show is about found friendship and creating community and all that stuff.
Right.
It also, I think, like, as much as these people needed each other, by the end, they kind of find themselves.
Hmm.
And so season two would just mainly be potentially, I don't know,
Right.
having to reconcile with these new selves in these new situations. And
Right.
that I think is inherently interesting.
Okay. Well, Ian, I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us today. And
Oh, thank you.
there's a lot of fan, like you said, it's getting a lot of positive response. So fingers crossed for season
Yeah.
two. We'd love to
Oh
see
my
your
God,
story
please.
continued.
Yeah, me too. I love it. And thank you. And, tell everybody you know to give it a watch.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ian. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.